the traditional mother role is something that I think we really should take time to celebrate, even if maybe you're in a situation where you didn't have a great mother. I know that's a case for some people too, but I think we always do. It's good to take a day, and try to celebrate and preserve the traditional role of mother because it's good. It's a and I mean traditional role of mother, the nurturing feminine. That's something that only a woman can provide. Only a woman can give birth. Only a woman can nurture a child in that way. It's part of the feminine genius, and it's something that I put the Mrs. Incredible or Elastigirl and Leia, Princess Leia, on the thumbnail there specifically because I was thinking I wanted to have characters who are still our heroes, are the main characters in their story while still being traditional mothers. Because we could talk about a lot of great mothers. I mean, Martha Kent, a lot of great parents of superheroes we could have put on there. But I wanted to put those two in particular because society today, and it's really due to feminism, it's 100% due to feminism, whatever wave of feminism you want to blame it on, but it's the idea that, oh, well, you can't, you got to live for you, don't live for some child, and whether that means, killing your children off and, so you can just stay single and work on your career, or whether it means having children and not being a proper mother at all. And it is true that, to have a child is the ultimate self-giving. I mean, in terms of just like time. I mean, a mother gives her body to her child, right? I mean, I've heard interviews. I've heard women talk like there was one woman who was a radio host or whatever, but it was a Catholic radio show or whatever, and she'd had like 4 or 5 kids, and they had them somewhat generally close together. And she said, after the fifth child was, grown and weaned, she was like, I got my body back. And I thought about it, and I'm like, yeah, that must be that, because, um, the mother carries the child through pregnancy. You're sharing the body with the child, and then using your body to feed the child, quite literally. And yeah, so I can imagine, even if it's just one child, at some point you get your body back. So yeah, it is certainly kind of the height of self giving in terms of literally giving your own body and everything and time and whatnot. And our society doesn't like to reward that. Our society actually likes to kind of shun that and say, yeah, but you need to live for yourself. You need to self care, this, and that. And no one's saying, they try to make this straw man out of parenthood, whether it's mothers, fathers, whatever, that, oh, if you're going to be the traditional mother, then there's no way that you can be you anymore. It's like, well, that's ridiculous. That's a real misunderstanding of what it means to self give, in the self fulfillment of self giving. It is certainly possible, and I think that you would be kind of crossing the line into the toxic mother, where you got to the point where you lived for nothing but your children. You know, your children were your fulfillment in every way. I mean, yeah, that can cross over into like the toxic mother, sure, but no one's arguing for that. That's not what traditional motherhood's about. So I love the examples of Elastigirl and Princess Leia right there. Who are two characters, and those characters in particular, because they still go out and adventure or achieve their heroics. They still do the things that only they are uniquely empowered to do for the world, right? Mrs. Incredible's out there, um, being Elastigirl, using her powers and her unique super stretch powers to fight crime. And Princess Leia is out there not being a general, you know, but being a diplomat. Of course, she eventually becomes more trained in her Jedi powers, and that's great. But what I love about those, especially those early books of the EU, like right after Return of the Jedi, especially like from the Thrawn trilogy, even the Thrawn trilogy, and then moving forward, is that she's a mother. I mean, she's pregnant half the time she's going through a lot of these journeys, or she's pregnant with her third child, and the twins are infants, and she is still using her diplomacy and being a diplomat both of their powers, you look at Mrs. Incredible and Princess Leia here, both of their powers are uniquely feminine based. Mrs. Incredible is kind of the more the symbolic, she stretches, she's flexible, she's able to, her body literally, she changes into whatever shape her family needs her to be, right? Whether that's, holding Dash and Violet from fighting, across the table in the one scene, or quite literally turning herself into a parachute to save them, turning herself into a boat, it's a beautiful symbolic picture of what the mother does. Just alters herself into anything her children need. Quite literally, and so that's a great symbolic role. And I love that. Even though The Incredibles 2 got a lot of flack, which I don't really understand, it wasn't the masterpiece that the first one was, but it was still quite a good film. And what I loved about it was the fact that they tried to take her and let her be the main, the people in the movie. They said, okay, we want superheroes to come back, so let's, Elastigirl, you're a great one. You're kind of a, you're not so dangerous. You're not so, Mr. Collateral Damage like Mr. Incredible is all the time. So you be the one to get out here and kind of be the face of superheroism. Bringing it back. And in the movie's all about kind of like, yeah, get out there and let the mother have the spotlight and let her do the thing. But what is the movie about? It's her journey realizing that's not really bringing her fulfillment. No, she wants her children. She wants her family. She needs her family. In fact, she can't even achieve the ultimate goal of the movie, defeat the baddie without her family there. So, I thought that movie was great, and I love that lesson there. For Princess Leia, even though she is, being trained by Luke to be a Jedi, and eventually, if you follow the EU all the way, she becomes, quite skilled, in her Jedi abilities. But even right away, like from the Thrawn trilogy into Dark Empire and all those early books, she uses her diplomacy. This is something unique that she learned growing up in Alderaan, from her foster parents, her father, and it's a uniquely feminine trait to be able to really read the emotions of everybody in the room. And let's put forth some great diplomacy here. Let's make sure we're all on board. Let's keep everybody tempers down, and let's make sure we're going here. I mean, that's beautiful, and she's wonderful at it. And the books really show that as her superpower. We think like, well, that's kind of a boring superpower, isn't it? Well, not really. Not when you've got a rebel alliance who's trying to be the new republic, and this is tenuous, connections and treaties and everything like that, still trying to fight the empire that keeps being reborn and so forth. So no, it's great. I love that, aspect of it. And that's real motherhood. A lot of people just can't handle that. I've told the story before at some point. I can't remember, but I'll say it again. I was in, when I was getting my master's in English literature, I took a class that was, thought it'd be fun, right? It was a science fiction class. I was like, oh, that's cool. No, it was just, how can we use these works of science fiction to further the political woke agendas? It was horrible. But we were reading Neuromancer, which is a great book. And, we read the short story that Johnny Mnemonic was based on and whatnot, because that's part of the universe. And I forget the girl's name, the character, the woman character in that. But in some of the eventual stories that he wrote, she eventually becomes a mother. She has a child. And one of the girls in the class was like, and I just thought, she becomes a mother, really? I mean, really, that's the only thing you can do with a female character? I'm like, the only thing you can do with a female character? Are you freaking kidding me? She grows a human in her body, feeds it with her body, nurtures it. That's the only thing you can do with a female character. So it's just that typical feminist garbage take, on being a mother. So you've got that, or you've got, okay, let's have the children and everything, but they're, it's almost like they exist for you. Don't let them keep you from doing your 9 to 5 and your everything you need to do with your life, and make sure you go back to school, make sure you do everything you want to do. Now, there's nothing wrong with working or going to school or whatever, depending on where your life takes you as a woman and a mother. But that notion that, don't let those children dare infringe upon your rights. Well, that's not how that works. I mean, children change everything. So yeah, I like those examples, and I wanted to use those examples on the thumbnail in particular because it's easy for, I mean, you want to talk about great mothers, like I said, Martha Kent, even, Padme, tragically dying, at their birth, is still trying to protect her children, even if need be from Anakin. You know, so a lot of great characters like that. But I tried to pick two that I think showed the best example to kind of fly in the face of this. We need to redo Motherhood or remake Motherhood and all this kind of stuff. And um, yeah, that's ridiculous. As Darth Enigma says, Shmi was Anakin's whole heart, or whole world, and she was taken from him twice. Yeah, but Shmi was willing to give him up for his own good. And that's, Shmi was his whole world, but he was her whole world. I mean, entirely. And you can imagine, we were in Anakin's perspective in the heart, and we stay in Anakin's perspective, in those prequels and the difficulty he has giving her up. But you can imagine what it was for her to give him up for his own good, so he wouldn't just stay there and remain a slave. Yeah. And, I think about that, I don't really know a mother who's given up a child for adoption, but you can imagine what a difficult thing that would be if a mother was in a situation, whether it was like a young mother, teenage mother, something like that, where she literally knew that she wouldn't be able to give her own child a very good life, and going through a process of adoption or whatever, and giving her child up to a loving couple who would be there. That's, I can't even imagine what that would be like. But talk about so even that kind of sacrifice is real motherhood. Andre Hernandez says, thoughts on Lois Lane being a mother to Jonathan Kent. I love that. And when it's done well, and when I say it's done well, I'm talking about the Rebirth comics up until uh, DiDio brought what's his name, Idiot Bendis, in there to just take a dump all over it. Those comics, if you get yourself Action Comics too, to an extent, but the Superman line, the Rebirth Superman, was really all about the family, and it was so amazing, so amazing. Every time I talk about how crappy Superman and Lois is, people are like, "What's wrong with Superman having a family?" Did I say anything was wrong with Superman having a family? I love Superman having a family and being a father and a husband, but Superman and Lois ain't it. You want a real good example of that? Yeah, the Superman Rebirth comics were just wonderful. And Lois Lane, even though she finds ways. I mean, she's not just, well, I'm just a housewife and that's it for the rest of my life. I mean, she still sends some stories in and stuff like that. But she's light years away from the, cutting edge, metropolis elite social life, investigative reporter that she is when her and Superman meet each other. For Lois Lane to agree to move out to the Kent farm, or to a farm, in like Clark's upbringing, that's a huge deal. It's a huge deal. And I don't think it's a big sacrifice for her in that she finds no joy out of it, because you think about Lois Lane's background. She grew up a military brat, right? Always moving around, really unable to truly lay down roots, So I think there's a great appeal for her to be able to go to, own this land, and this is our home, our homestead, and certainly to have a child who is a superhero. I mean, that's another aspect. I was focusing specifically on mothers who are heroes themselves. But if you want to look at, whether it's Martha Kent or Lois Lane for Jonathan Kent, yeah, that's to recognize that your child has certain gifts and abilities that the world needs, and that are somewhat going to put that child in harm. I mean, that's a true to life story, right? Because any child, any human being has a certain level of gifts and talents and abilities, and they put that out there, and the world's going to throw stuff at them at some point, and it's interesting. I mean, being a parent. I mean, I know we're talking about Mother's Day, but I'm not a mother, so I'm a father. So you're going to get that perspective a little bit, with Alyssa, it's different. Alyssa's special needs. She's on the autistic spectrum, and she's pretty severe on it. She's never gonna leave house and go to college or go get married or anything like that. I've got her for her life, and I love her to pieces. Love that. That comes with its own set of challenges. Having a special needs child that you need to do kind of more constant, always care for. That maybe normal children will sort of grow out of toddlerhood or something. But I was talking to Fan Man, and his daughter is graduating high school this year, so she's about to go off to college. And he's talking about how, he and his wife dealing with their child leaving the house and what a harrowing experience that is. As I'm sure it is. It's every parent has to go through that. But thinking that's kind of the trade off. I don't have to worry about that. You know, this is always going to be Daddy's little girl. So. But yeah, but she's got her own sort of superpowers, in her own abilities and her own gifts and everything like that. And for a parent, I mean, certainly a mother's like Lois Lane we're talking about here, takes a special kind of parent to not, as I said, not become a toxic mother and make, say Jonathan Kent her fulfillment, and wanting to be there like a stage mom or something, and but letting him have his his life, being there to nurture and care for him. And you have to develop yourself to a certain degree as a parent to be a healthy parent for your child. uh, you know that word self-care is such a, it's so misused today, and it's usually taken in a far extreme. But to the basic level of it, there is such a case to be made for a basic level of self-care. Yeah, I know that, for example, given my emotional and psychological and temperamental makeup, I need some downtime, some veg time, some introvert time, so that I can really be there for Alyssa and constantly answer all of her questions and do all the scripting and do all this and that. I mean, every parent needs to do that to a